We all make mistakes. The most important thing is the lessons we learn from them. My wife is on the verge of making her biggest mistake. She could lose not only me, but herself. We had an average family, 2 kids and a steady income, but at some point, things went wrong. My name is Mark Chase. I'm going to start my story from when I was 18 years old. I had just graduated from high school. Around the same time, I started college. Like many of my peers, I probably thought I was a tough guy. I dated different girls and tested how many of them I could charm. It was kind of a challenge for me. Most guys my age soon realized that their thoughts were occupied not so much with studying as with the pursuit of seduction. Nevertheless, I studied enough in college to get a good job in sales. This job opened up new opportunities for me. I made sure not to miss them. I managed to become one of the top-selling salespeople. I went door to door, apartment to apartment selling merchandise. There were times when I took advantage of my position. It was a special feeling. Walking into a house where there was usually a single woman dressed in something sexy or just a robe, I would usually make a quick deal, then behaved in a way that seemed natural for a young man and a single woman of any age. The hardest part was figuring out if the woman was flirting with me or wanted something more. I didn't want to jeopardize my job because of potential involvement and subsequent termination. With so much going on around me, I preferred that women take the initiative. If they started talking about sex or made the first move, I was willing to reciprocate. I may have missed a lot of opportunities by acting this way. One day, while doing a little shopping at the mall, I met a charming young woman. She was petite, with a height of just over 5 feet, an infectious smile, and an attractive figure. She served me at the checkout counter. I decided to use my charm to talk her into going on a date. After her 10th visit to the store, she agreed. I truly fell in love with her and just hoped she shared my feelings. At the time, I was still working in sales and dating Ruth. We got along great, and our relationship soon took to the next level. Yes, it was a love unlike anything I had experienced before. I was eager to please not only myself, but her as well. 10 months into our relationship, Ruth became pregnant despite using birth control. We were the couple in 100 who encountered this surprise, and we decided to get married in the 4th month of her pregnancy. Looking back, I realized that I was not ready for marriage. I genuinely loved Ruth, it's true, but I was only 20 and completely immature. I acted rashly, and after we were married, I found myself in bed with other women simply because I could. I still believed in our relationship. I didn't brag about my affairs, but I think people knew I was married and about to have a child. I realized that some might have called me a scoundrel or worse, and I deserved those judgments. I realize that now, but back then it just seemed like a desire to be with any woman. I was immature and unprepared for the responsibilities that marriage and fatherhood impose. One day, Ruth discovered that I had not been faithful to our marriage. Afterward, she could not hold back her tears. We spent long hours discussing what had happened, and she seriously considered divorce, which might have been the best solution for her. Nevertheless, she found the strength to forgive me. I was truly sorry for what I had done. The consequences of my infidelity were a real revelation. As a young man, I rarely thought about the consequences of my actions, but that all changed when I saw the pain I had caused my wife. That realization tore me apart. I vowed never to betray her. From then on, I strived to be the best husband I could be. Soon we had a son whom we named Jacob. We faced many challenges like any other family. We had financial problems, and we often argued over nothing. But we learned to resolve our differences and kept our love alive. After this incident, my love for Ruth only grew stronger. Although I couldn't always show it, she knew I was willing to do anything for her. Our closeness was truly special. A few years later, our second son, David, was born. Our happiness seemed boundless. We were a real family, albeit with the usual problems and desires. I had always dreamed of owning my own business so that I could decide my own destiny. After many conversations with Ruth, and despite financial difficulties, we purchased a small construction store. The business didn't bring in much money, but it was enough for us to get on with our lives. I was happy to realize my dream. Ruth struggled with her weight after the birth of our second child and often criticized herself. I always assured her of her beauty. Her looks didn't matter to me. I loved her for who she was. Despite my encouragement, she rarely believed me. We often argued about her diet and her attempts to lose weight. Each time these arguments ended with reminders of my past mistake. Although it was a long time ago and Ruth said she forgave me, apparently some wounds lingered for a very long time. My wife was always busy raising our sons and worked part-time to be able to give them more attention. When our sons entered middle school, my wife's career took an upward turn. She was offered a promotion and became the head of her department. This increased her income significantly. She then decided to focus on herself. She started dieting again and joined a women's fitness club. This didn't bother me, as it was a place exclusively for women. However, I couldn't help but wonder if such a decision could lead to infidelity. Her determination and the results she was starting to show comforted me. She was losing weight and feeling noticeably better, which no doubt pleased me. Our married life, like many, had its ups and downs, especially when it came to sex. After many years of marriage, it seemed that this passion had become something commonplace for us. Sometimes we could go months without making love. However, when we did, the moments were truly magical. Her work and her new figure brought her joy, and I could see how much happier she had become. One day she came home and asked if I would mind if she spent some time with friends. Of course, I had nothing against it since she hadn't seen them in years. She mentioned that they had planned a bachelorette party for Saturday and wanted to make sure I was okay. I thought that seemed odd to me. I sensed that something was bothering her. When I asked about the problem, she said that she might be experiencing menopause symptoms that were affecting her mood. I hugged her, assuring her of my love and support. That afternoon, as she was getting ready for a party with friends, I couldn't help but notice her frozen in my arms. I realized that we had issues, but that we would have to put them on hold for now. I decided to give her space and time. As always, she looked beautiful in her outfit, and I never got bored of it. After telling her that, before she left, she let me know where she was going and that her friend Pam was picking her up. Left alone, I realized that I needed to find out more about what was going on with her and how we could solve our problems together. I never wanted to spy on her. My trust in Ruth was boundless. However, as I watched her behavior, I couldn't help but notice that something had changed. It was important for me to understand the reasons for this change, especially when Ruth and her friends started going to a huge dance club. It was easy to get lost in the crowd there. I chose a seat on the second-floor balcony, where I had a view of the whole room. From there, I could see Ruth and her friends in the cozy semicircular booths, having a good time. Maybe I was wrong in my suspicions. Ruth's friends were diverse. They included married and single women as well as divorcees. Most of them I had met once or twice, but there were some I saw for the first time, presumably acquaintances from the gym. After about half an hour, several men approached their table and offered the ladies a dance. Ruth declined at first, but after a couple of cocktails, she agreed. I didn't see anything alarming about it. I was concerned, however, about a potential problem she might have encountered over time. She was increasingly staying on the dance floor among men I didn't know. Perhaps they were coworkers or just strangers looking to have a good time. I decided to stay a little longer to see what would happen next. I watched as she began to slow dance with one guy who put his arm around her and let his hand slide over her buttocks, pulling her closer to him. She reacted by pushing his hands away, but he insisted and eventually tried again. When he grabbed her once more, she briefly left his hand in place before pushing him away again. Then his hand moved to her breast, where it lingered for a few seconds before she pushed him away again. This made me very concerned. I wondered if I should intervene or say something. I was sure she was unaware of my presence. I wondered if this behavior was normal for her or if she just didn't want to make a scene. At the end of the song, she went back to her friends. I was too far away to make out their conversation. Some of the girls seemed cheerful or smiling though. After a few minutes, they finished their drinks and started packing up to leave. The guy she was dancing with came up to her to say goodbye and kissed her lightly. It made me wonder if I saw more in their interaction than was actually there. I quickly got up and walked through the back door and headed to the car to go home. The boys were already watching TV. I nodded a greeting to them and went to make something to drink, smelling the odor of alcohol, which seemed like a fitting end to the evening. 10 minutes after I arrived home, Ruth arrived as well. I said hello and asked her how her evening had been. She replied that it was fine, although looking at her, she seemed a little tense. I told Ruth that we needed to talk. I knew Ruth had never lied to me. She might have her secrets, as we all do, but I had never caught her in an outright lie. I noticed tears in the corners of her eyes. She barely looked at me. Holding back her emotions, she said, "Mark, I have a problem and I don't know how to solve it." Her voice shook and she began to cry. I hugged her gently, trying to comfort her, and asked if this had anything to do with her bachelorette party. She ambiguously replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. Let's sit down, we need to talk." My heart clenched with a premonition of trouble. Ruth told me what had happened tonight and why she was so upset. She began her story about how she and her friends went to a club where they started drinking and dancing. One guy started to persistently touch her and she didn't stop him right away. She had a hard time confessing. My bewilderment turned to shock when Ruth admitted that she liked attention from men. This feeling had plagued her for months. She looked to me for support, but I couldn't hide my disappointment. "Ruth, this is cheating. Have you been with someone else?" I asked. Feeling my heart tearing apart, I listened to her answer. Through tears, she replied that she had never cheated on me physically, but admitted that she had allowed men to touch her. This revelation shattered my view of our marriage. Ruth begged me not to leave, saying she loved me. But I realized that we both needed time to sort out our feelings and desires. I suggested that we would have to live apart for a while. She would stay home with our sons and I would move into the apartment above my store. Those 2 months were going to be a test for both of us, a time when Ruth needed to decide what she really wanted out of life and our relationship. I made it clear that if she chose the path of freedom and a new relationship, I would file for divorce immediately. It was the hardest decision of my life, but I realized that love and trust were essential to the survival of our relationship. I began my conversation when our sons invited us into the living room the next morning. They seemed to catch snippets of yesterday's conversation from their rooms. When they sat down, I opened my heart to them and explained that their mom and I were facing some family challenges. This meant that I would have to live above the store for a while until we resolved our issues. I emphasized that none of this was their fault and that it was a matter between their mom and me. Ruth, standing behind them, couldn't hold back her tears but chose to remain silent. I assured them that we both loved them very much and that they were welcome to contact us at any time. I promised to attend their school functions. I assured them that nothing would change for them except my absence from home. I assured them that no matter what happens in the future, they will always have a roof over their heads. They wouldn't have to worry about moving or losing friends. They wanted to know more, but I explained that was all I could share at this point. I admitted that their mother and I were facing some serious issues. It needed to be resolved, and we would see how things progressed over the next 2 months. After they helped me move my personal belongings into the apartment above the store, I asked them to support their mother in any way they could. She needed their love. I advised them not to ask her too many questions about the separation and to help around the house. I knew they were good boys and would do their best. I was only a mile away from them, ready to help if needed. Ruth needed time to sort out the situation. I was full of doubts myself, afraid of losing her. My life seemed like hell. Everything depended on Ruth now. I had some serious problems to overcome. I had a wife I trusted more than anyone in the world. Knowing that she had never cheated on me and had always supported our marriage by telling me the truth. But her last truth could have been the end of our marriage. I loved her more than anything in the world and I didn't want to lose her. I wasn't weak and I was willing to fight for her. But I didn't know where to start. This decision became the most important decision of her life. Choose to have an affair or save our marriage. But if she loved me, she wouldn't have to choose. As I moved into my new apartment above the store, I felt an acute sense of pain and loneliness. Thoughts of Ruth tormented me. Trying to give her space and time to think, I immersed myself in my work, spending every spare minute in the store to distract myself. Business was booming, and I found myself swamped with paperwork that I hated. While the increase in sales was gratifying, I realized I couldn't do it on my own. I decided to hire an office worker and placed an ad in the newspaper. My son supported me by helping out at the store every couple of days. Their visits were not just business help, but a connection to the past. They told me how their mother dealt with my absence. She cried a lot and felt depressed. When I learned that Ruth had made a doctor's appointment, I realized how deep her pain was. One day Pam, a longtime friend of Ruth's and an acquaintance of mine, walked into the office. She was closer to Ruth than anyone else and candidly expressed her thoughts about my actions. Her words were harsh. She called me a fool for abandoning Ruth during such a difficult time instead of supporting and protecting her. According to Pam, Ruth needed me more than ever, and I had betrayed her by leaving her alone with her problems. This conversation made me reconsider my actions. I began to see the situation from a different angle, realizing that perhaps I had been hasty in my decision to give Ruth time and space instead of being there to help her through her difficulties. In the back of my mind, I began to realize that love and support might have been the best medicine for her. I have always considered myself a person who does the right thing, but a recent conversation with Pam made me question my beliefs. I will always be there for you, I promised Ruth before I left, but the realization came too late. Pam was right, what I did was stupid. Turning to Pam, I admitted my confusion, not knowing how to help Ruth. My love for her was very strong, and Pam, her best friend, knew that better than anyone. "Didn't you see the warning signs beforehand?" she asked me. We both knew Ruth was going through difficulties. She had been sharing her anxieties with me for months. Perhaps the changes in her life or the emotional swings brought on by her new social circle at the gym had caused her to see the world differently. Since Ruth had started going to the gym and losing weight, she had begun to attract the attention of other men, which certainly affected her self-esteem. Before she left, Pam reminded me of an important meeting I needed to be at on Friday at 9:00 p.m. Shocked, I couldn't understand what Pam meant. "What's going on?" I asked. She explained that there was a business meeting on Friday at 7:00 p.m. All mid-level managers, including my wife's company, are expected to attend, including dinner, as well as cocktails and spouse attire. Pam also shared some disturbing news. Some managers plan to get Ruth drunk and seduce her, and I won't be allowed in, much as I'd hate to do so. "I have no control over the situation," she emphasized, adding that no one will be around to protect Ruth at this unusual event. "Why is Ruth even going there? Does she know about it?" I asked. "Yes, but she has to be there since she is part of the leadership," Pam replied, adding that she would keep an eye on Ruth to make sure she didn't get in trouble. I thanked Pam for her friendship and concern for Ruth, but in the back of my mind, I knew that at 9:00 on Friday night, Ruth's stupid husband, who I don't think she deserves, would protect her. That husband is me. I met Mark when we were young. I was working in a mall store at the time. The first time I saw him was when he walked in and started urging me to go out with him. His persistence day after day amused me until I finally agreed. His surprised look after my many refusals turned into a question. "Are you serious? Do you really want to go on a date with me?" His smile was so genuine that I couldn't refuse. When we started dating, our interactions became more intimate and I allowed him to touch me. My feelings for Mark grew into a deep love, although I tried not to show it too openly. As time went on, our relationship grew closer and I decided to take care of contraception. However, despite the precautions I took, I discovered that I was pregnant. This news shocked me, and when I shared it with Mark, he went from initial surprise to promising to always be there for me and the baby. Throughout our many years together, we have experienced many things. I was successful at work, gained more independence, and even managed to lose a significant amount of weight, which did not go unnoticed by the opposite sex. However, my heart was fully committed to Mark, despite the other women at the gym discussing their romantic adventures. I treasured our deep connection and shared moments. My friend Pam gave me great support during difficult times, even when Mark couldn't understand my feelings. She suggested seeking professional help, but I hesitated given our family values. Pam also warned me of the potential dangers of the consequences of my behavior, reminding me of the importance of keeping our vows and sincere feelings for each other. I shared with Pam what I had heard from the girls at the gym. They were intentionally seeking more attention from the opposite sex. Looking at me, Pam asked, "Ruth, do you really need to get attention from strange men?" I realized she was right. The feeling of being the center of attention was nice. I allowed some men to touch me over my clothes in an effort to attract even more attention. But after a couple months, I promised myself that I would end a life filled with unwanted attention and men whispering about their desires. They began to bore me. I rejected them, claiming I would never betray my husband despite his infidelity. I once made the mistake of confessing to a coworker that I often wondered what it would be like to be with someone else. Mark was my one and only love, and I couldn't compare him to anyone else. He always made sure that my feelings were both tender and passionate. As time went on, I began to experience mood swings and felt that Mark wasn't paying enough attention to me. My thoughts were often filled with wild fantasies that scared me. I felt like I was going crazy, unable to cope with these fantasies. Eventually, I confessed to Mark that I needed his care and warmth in a way I never had before. But in response, he gave me an ultimatum. If I had an affair, he would file for divorce. He then announced that he was moving out, giving me 2 months to make a decision. I was devastated and didn't know what to do. If it hadn't been for Pam's support in the first weeks after Mark left, I wouldn't have known what to do next. Pam relived her nightmare when she caught her husband with another woman. Shocked by the betrayal, she was ready to take drastic action. They ended up divorcing. She has since started dating again, but has been extremely cautious. She is now dating Ray, whose wife left him for another man 3 years ago. They seem happy together, and I sincerely hope things work out for them. Pam deserves to be truly happy. She is an exceptional person and a loyal friend who can always be counted on. I scheduled a consultation with my doctor this week. Even though I had plans on Friday, the doctor, a woman with a warm eye, suggested we start our conversation with a brief discussion. I shared with her my worries, the incessant crying, and the turbulent emotions I couldn't control. We then moved on to more difficult topics, including my husband's ultimatum regarding our sex life and even a potential affair. She smiled and pointed out that I should have come to her much earlier. In her opinion, many problems could have been avoided. My doctor canceled my follow-up appointments and prescribed a hormone relaxant to stabilize my emotional outbursts caused by weight changes. She assured me that many of the medications would no longer be necessary because they only exacerbated the internal conflict in my body. According to her, my body had just begun a maturation process that would last for many more years. She looked at me seriously as she broached the subject of my husband and expressed regret that he was not supporting me as he should. She noted that she has seen many couples break up because of misunderstanding and lack of support. From her perspective, many men pursue only superficial goals, forgetting the depth and significance of the relationship. She suggested that I talk to my husband again, convinced that an honest conversation could bring us closer together. At the end of our meeting, the doctor insisted that I contact her if I have any problems. Otherwise, she expects to see me in 2 months. As I left, I couldn't hold back my tears, but she hugged me and assured me that everything would work out. Her words gave me hope that after surviving Friday, I could meet Mark on Saturday and discuss everything that was going on. I miss him so much, that weirdo. Continuing the story on Mark's behalf, at the time in my life when Pam laid everything out for me, I realized how badly mistaken I had been about Ruth. I needed to talk to her. When I tried to call her, I was told she was at a doctor's appointment. That was just the beginning of my attempts to contact her. On Thursday, I finally got through to her at work. Ruth was glad to hear my voice and suggested we meet on Saturday. I suggested meeting on Friday, but she explained that she couldn't because of an important meeting that would last until late afternoon. With sadness in my voice, I professed my love and she reciprocated. She asked me to come on Saturday. Her voice trembled when she asked me to, and I promised to be there without any hesitation. Thursday turned out to be a rough day for me. Nightmares kept me awake. In my dream, I saw myself entering a restaurant where Ruth was sitting between 2 men, slightly drunk. Her dress shifted, exposing part of her body. Waking up on Friday, I found a bustle in the store, but my thoughts were of Ruth. I tried to contact her, but to no avail. Her supervisor only informed me of her absence. Then I asked my coworker Milton to open the store on Saturday so I could meet Ruth. He agreed, noting that he could manage without my help. Pam, whom I met at the office center, told me that Ruth was excited about our upcoming meeting. According to Pam, Ruth looked stunning dressed in an elegant black mini dress. She also mentioned that her bosses Edward and Ryan were planning to offer her an intimate evening, while other coworkers didn't want to get involved out of respect for Ruth as a person. Pam had warned me that the rumors about Edward and Ryan's plans could be either true or fiction. However, given their influence, few dared to confront them. I thanked Pam, emphasizing her sincere friendship and support, and urged her to do the right thing. Pam confidently stated that Ruth and I were like 2 soulmates, expressing her hope that we could not be separated, as we were both true friends to her. She added that her boyfriend Ray was also very concerned about her getting home safely. I decided to tidy up and get ready for a night out at a fancy restaurant. I chose Docker pants and a sports jacket, deciding not to wear a tie this time. As a hardware store owner, I always tried to look presentable but not overdressed. In the evening, I called my sons to discuss work matters, and they assured me of their willingness to help, especially Milton when needed. It was now 8:30 p.m., and I went to the store where Milton was putting merchandise on the shelves. I was proud of how well they worked, even as my sons, and dreamed that one day the store would pass into their hands, continuing the family business. Walking up to Milton, I asked him for a wad of coins. Although his look was somewhat surprised, he handed them to me. Afterward, I headed to the restaurant where, to my surprise, I found Pam and Ray dining together. Pam smiled and remarked that although we were not in a separate room, we were close enough to each other. She mentioned that many coworkers had already left. I asked about her bosses, about Ed and Ryan. I saw my wife sitting with two men. I went outside and threw a rock at one of the cars, and then the alarm went off. It was Ryan's car, who at that time had gone out to check his Mercedes. Ruth decided it was time to make Ed pay for his actions and splashed a drink in his face. Suddenly, I stormed over to their table with a wad of coins and punched Ed, breaking his nose. The first blow sent the coins flying in different directions, and Ed fell to the floor. When Ryan came back, he started threatening me with a lawsuit and confiscation of my store. But Ruth offered a better solution by pulling out a tape recorder. She turned on the tape, which could have changed the outcome of the situation. On Monday, I planned to file a complaint against Ryan and Ed for sexual harassment, who were still in the room. Ruth said that the only reason she put up with their molestation in the evening was to film them. She hoped it would help prevent them from harassing other women. After saying that, she kicked Ryan in the groin, causing him to shriek and fall down next to Ed. I took Ruth's hand and we headed for the exit. We were met at the door by the audience, who started applauding us. We walked out together, holding hands, outside the restaurant. Pam and Rai were waiting for us, smiling. Pam hugged Ruth, and Rai exchanged thank yous with me. Noticing a sudden noise and a car alarm going off, we decided to stay a moment. I thanked Rai, to which he responded with a polite "You're welcome." After Pam and Ray left us, Ruth and I headed to my car. Suddenly, I realized that I hadn't said a word all evening. As I stopped, I looked at Ruth and said, "She looks great. I am the happiest man on earth that you have forgiven me for everything." Tears flowed from her eyes as she hugged me tightly. At home, we went straight to the bedroom. Taking off her dress, Ruth asked me what I was thinking. "Why are you dressed up like that for them?" I wondered. She replied that she dressed up for me to show me that I had something they would never have. "I love you so much," I confessed, and we hugged as we lay in bed. The next morning, after waking up and not finding our sons already gone to work, I noticed a note on the refrigerator. "Welcome home, Dad. We missed you." It was written on behalf of Jacob and David. Ruth added her own note. The rest of the weekend went great. Our sons helped us with the car. Ruth and I laughed, proud of our tradition of protecting each other and those we love. At dawn on Monday, I went to work. Breaking up with Ruth seemed unbearable. We had just started a new relationship, and I'd already had to leave to catch up on work. At the same time, Ruth went to see our attorney to discuss the evidence supporting Ed and Ryan's inappropriate behavior. That evening, the attorney confirmed that this was a typical case of sexual harassment. Ruth has since taken a leave of absence, deciding to wait until the proceedings were over. While Milton and I screened candidates for the accounting position, none of the applicants received our approval. However, Milton returned to the office one day and announced that, to my surprise, he had found the perfect candidate, whom he had already hired without my knowledge. I was shocked at his audacity, but when Ruth appeared in the doorway and announced that she had all the necessary skills and could add value, I couldn't hide my delight. A month after Ruth returned to the doctor's office, she received the happy news. Her doctor was supportive, noting the significant improvement in her condition after she had managed to control her hormones and relieve the stress of her previous job. However, Ruth faced a new challenge. She was pregnant. Tears of joy and fear mingled when she asked me if I loved her. My support was unconditional, and together we rejoiced at the impending addition. 9 months of trials passed, and we became parents to a wonderful baby girl, Pamela, who was the epitome of mom's beauty. Ruth is no longer just an accountant. She has become a key figure in our home and business. We have found happiness and confidence in the future. Especially after the harassment case was resolved in our favor, we secured our children's future. All the hardships were behind us. There was only joy and love ahead of us. This is the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about it. We will be interested in the story. Also, do not forget to put a like and subscribe to our channel. This way you will not miss new, no less interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!
Thank you so much for watching my video and your time. Please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell button. Also, I am very interested to know your personal opinion about this story. You can write it in the comments. I will definitely read it and reply to you personally.